I can write a book of theory about how to solve the problems of drug addiction. But a drug addict who's been through it, had the monkey on his back, come out of it, can write a much more valid book. And that's why Askia Muhammad, who was in the advisory group of people that advised the state of California, he had come through it. He wasn't theoretical in his approach to that problem. And that's so Malcolm, the problems that he addressed were not theoretical problems. They were real problems that he lived. And that's why the culmination of his life in the Hajj and the events, and if you have not listened to his talks, it's a good thing to do. And I'll tell you something that I've always noted about his talks that occur after Mecca is when anger is removed from the heart, it's very difficult to speak in a certain way that he was able to speak prior to Mecca. And you can see it's as if he himself is trying to find his voice. And he was, because of his inherent brilliance and his natural ability to reason, because he always sets up arguments. Whenever you listen to he's always got an argument, and he hits on these points, and he gets to the point where it's almost irrefutable. The only thing that could stop an intellect like that is a bullet. And that's why the worst types of people are people that want to snuff out truth with violence, because they know that they cannot snuff out truth with falsehood. They can't do it. You see, they can't sit on the same, and this is why there are people in this country that are never allowed into these panels with these pundits that tell you what's wrong with the country. There are certain people that are not allowed to sit on those panels, because if they start speaking, suddenly people are going to notice that these other characters over here, they don't make any sense. In fact, they're using sophistical reasoning. And they don't teach logic in school anymore. They don't teach it because they don't want people to be able to see through sophistical arguments. That's why they don't teach it. That's why logic was part of every single traditional curriculum in school, was to teach people how to think, how to reason. And one of the chapters in every text of logic is, in Arabic they call it al-mughalatat, sophistical reasoning. You learn how to see sophistical argumentation. You learn how to see flaws in reasoning, like an ad hominem attack. Because if somebody's speaking the truth and then a man wants to refute him, he says, hey, this guy beats his wife. And then suddenly we've gone from an intellectual argument to an ad hominem attack. And now everybody's looking at him like a wife beater. It's a little hard to hear what he was talking about before that. And it's a very common way of attacking, and it occurs all the time. Politicians now use this method. So when you see a commercial of one politician, what he spends his time doing is attacking the other. He's not offering you, what are you going to do? He's just telling you how bad this guy is, because it starts making him look a little good in light of how bad he is. The problem is the other one uses the same ad company that produced the commercials, and they can do as good a job as the other one, and so everybody's left just wondering. It's like these pamphlets they hand out to you at the voting booth, and if you read the pro, you're going to vote for it, but then you read the con, you decide to vote against it, and it just depends on which one you read last. Because they have lawyers that are trained in very clever techniques of sophistry. And that's why, in the end of the day, Socrates, they had to condemn him to death. Because you can't have those characters walking around. They're dangerous people. Really, they're dangerous people. People that actually can think and reason and speak the truth are dangerous people to have around for the people that have something to lose when the truth is heard. And that's why Malcolm, one of the things that he said, he talked about Islam being a religion that wants fairness. And he said, and the only people that don't like that type of religion are wolves that prey on sheep. Because when somebody's making his living off exploiting others, and then you introduce something that's going to remove that ability of exploitation, he feels a vested interest being threatened. And if it gets too serious, depending on how powerful he is, he might move to try to eliminate that threat to his vested interest, which occurred in Mecca when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ began to preach about the unity of God, and suddenly all these Meccans are thinking, wait a second, our business is based on the fact we have 360 idols in the Kaaba, and the reason all these Arabs come and visit Mecca every year is because their idols are here, and that's how we make our money. The polytheists were very ecumenical. Anybody could bring their idol to Mecca and put it there. They didn't have a problem with that. But if you say there's only one God and therefore remove all those idols, they had a problem with that. Because suddenly they had these vested interests that were being threatened. Also their traditions, because it was based on the idea that their fathers were these great men, and the idea of saying that our fathers were fools to be worshiping stones, they viewed that as a threat also to their lineage. Because I'm proud because my father was so-and-so, and now you're telling me my father was a fool? It becomes a little upsetting. So all these vested interests. And then another problem. The Prophet ﷺ he was an aristocrat. He wasn't one of the oppressed rising up with the banner of down with the aristocrats. He was one of their own. He was the son of Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib was one of the greatest notables of Mecca. He was the lord of Quraysh. And this is his son who's saying, you people have gone astray. Now, what I'd like to look at is this idea of what happened in Mecca. And I'll just give you from my own experience of going to Mecca many, many times and making the pilgrimage more than once. I remember on my first pilgrimage, and one of the things that Malik Shabazz said in his autobiography about the pilgrimage was he said he learned at Mecca that all humanity snores in the same language. And that's a message to learn in Hajj, that we share these very similar characteristics. And you look at people on Hajj and you see all of these, you see short people, fat people, skinny people, tall people, beautiful people, ugly people, people with diseases, people in full health, young people, middle-aged people, old people, men, women, every color, every possible type of human that you could imagine, and even some that you couldn't even imagine, you see on Hajj. And this idea that everybody's the same for those few days that you spend in Hajj, they're all stripped of their rings and if they have a watch, if it's a Rolex or a Timex, it's stripped. And then you can't come in with your Lexus and think that everybody's going to move out of your way. Because even the princes, when they come in, they end up being in traffic jams just like everybody else. So there's this equalizing event that occurs. And the message of that, because what Mecca is about, what the Hajj is about the Day of Judgment, is about preparation for the Day of Judgment. And there's a wonderful dialogue that Plato mentions